Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Stephen King Cast. One man's musings on the works. One man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I'll review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication. And this week, actually, I am going to be talking about one of Stephen King's more recent movie adaptations. We'll be talking about The Long Walk today. So I have a lot of thoughts to share on The Long Walk. But first, I would like to read a listener email. So this is from longtime listener Bryant, who is writing in response to a recent episode in which I discussed my thoughts on Welcome to Derry, Welcome to Derry, which is on HBO. And Bryant wrote, "Loved your episode about Welcome to Derry. It clarified a lot of my own feelings about the show, which are on a very similar track as yours. The military subplot is cock-a-doodle. Imagine that running parallel to It. Someplace there's a cabal of warmongers sitting around discussing whether they can do anything to exploit the fear cycle, or if they'll have to wait until the next one. All that is, in my opinion, chump-level fan fiction. That it's well cast and well played makes it worse somehow. It reminds me of another HBO show, Dune Prophecy, which is an utter squandering of that particular IP. I'd hoped Derry would be more like another HBO IP framing Operation Watchmen, which did its own thing quite well. Maybe Welcome to Derry will as well over time, but so far bupkis. Andy Muschietti made something out of the first It thanks to the great source material. Here he's rudderless." Regarding Never Flinch, and he's referring to the most recent novel by Stephen King, nope, didn't care for it. It took me 2/3 of the novel to become even slightly invested, and from there it sailed, but looking back on it, even that final third was weak. I think it's the worst novel King has ever published by a fairly wide margin. Even my previous least favorite of his books, End of Watch, seemed essentially of a piece with his overall body of work. Never Flinch just seemed ill-advised and poorly executed. Occasional flashes of Kingian brilliance, but they were few and far between. Here's hoping the third Talisman novel is a return to form. So Bryant is referring to his next book, which is going to be the next installment in his chronicling of Jack Sawyer, in who we first met in The Talisman, and then in Black House. And so now we have the third novel coming out. Based on King's publishing track record, we could see it as early as spring 2026. And probably as late as fall 2026. But I'm very excited for that. And, I really was disappointed with Never Flinch, unfortunately. So that wasn't my favorite reading experience of a Stephen King novel. But if anyone has anything real positive to say, I think that that's important. So please write into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. And as always, if anyone has any thoughts on anything, whether it's on today's episode, The Long Walk, last week I discussed King's Sorrow by Joe Hill. If you have any thoughts on that, please give me your thoughts on King's Sorrow. If you're enjoying Welcome to Derry, if you're not enjoying Welcome to Derry, if there's potential there that you see that maybe I don't, or any positive things, please write into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. Also, head on over to iTunes and leave a review. That would really, really help me out. Okay, so today I'm going to now switch gears and talk about The Long Walk, a recent movie which came out earlier this fall, and now it's on VOD. So I'll get into this a little bit more, but first I want to read the Wikipedia summary. In an alternate 20th century, the United States is a totalitarian military regime following a devastating war. The regime has established an annual event, The Long Walk, which aims to inspire patriotism and work ethic among the destitute, as the country is in the grips of a severe economic depression. 50 teenage boys, one from each state, are chosen randomly, given water and rations, and must walk hundreds of miles nonstop while escorted by armed soldiers who also broadcast the event. Those who fall below 3 miles per hour or stop walking receive up to 3 warnings before being executed. The walk ends when there is only one survivor remaining, who receives a large cash prize and can have one wish fulfilled. Although the sign-up is technically voluntary, nearly all eligible men do so every year in the hope of improving their families' lives. Raymond Ray Garrity, the year's participant from Maine, is driven to the starting line near the Maine-Canada border by his mother Ginny, who begs him to back out even though the deadline to do so has already passed. Ray refuses and meets the other participants, including Pete McFreeze, Billy Stebbins, Arthur Baker, Collie Parker, Gary Barkovich, Hank Olson, and Richard Harkness. The Major, a mysterious official who oversees the regime's death squads, starts the walk and greets the boys from time to time as they proceed southward. During the first day, Ray gets to know the other walkers and forms a bond with Pete. A boy named Curly is the first to be killed after he develops a Charlie horse in his leg. Barkovich is shunned by the group for provoking another walker named Rank Saunders into attacking him, resulting in Rank's execution. As the walk continues, Pete says he wants to use his wish to improve the world. Ray wants to wish for a rifle to kill the Major as revenge for his father's execution over political opposition. Pete tried to talk Ray out of it, admits that he cannot let someone die to win, and intends to sit down once he has had enough. More walkers die as the days pass, including Harkness. Hank becomes delirious and tries to attack the soldiers, but they shoot him and let him bleed to death. After learning he was married, the boys vow to send money to his widow. Guilt over Rank's deaths and his execution from the pack lead Barkovich to beg to join. Soon after Ray agrees, Barkovich has a mental breakdown and fatally stabs himself in the throat. Only Ray, Pete, Stebbins, Art, and Collie remain. While walking through his hometown at Freeport, Ray spots Ginny and runs to her apologizing for competing. He is almost killed for stepping off the road but is saved by Pete. Collie steals a rifle and shoots a soldier, then kills himself after being wounded by the others. Art develops an internal hemorrhage, and thanks to Pete and Ray for being his friends before stopping. Stebbins, who has fallen ill, reveals to Ray and Pete that he is one of the Major's many illegitimate sons, and he intended to use his wish to be taken into his father's home. He tells the pair it was an honor to walk with them before stopping, leaving Ray and Pete as the final two walkers. On the evening of the fifth day, and after 331 miles, the pair enters a city in which a large crowd has gathered to see who will win. Pete sits down, but Ray picks him up and encourages to keep going. He does so, only for Ray to stop walking instead. The Major personally executes Ray and congratulates Pete as the winner. When asked to state his wish, Pete carries out Ray's plan by asking for a rifle and killing the Major to win. He then turns to the now empty and silent street and continues walking. Okay, so here are my thoughts. So if I'm correct in this, and I could be wrong, but I think that I'm right, there were 4 Stephen King movies this year. And the first being The Monkey, which came out in late January. No, it was February. But let me focus on this one and the 2 that bookended it. Okay, and I'll kind of explain why. Now, of these 3 movies, only 2 of them were buzzed about. Okay, the first, The Life of Chuck, and then there was The Long Walk, and then there was the much anticipated Edgar Wright directed Glenn Powell starring Running Man. Okay, now let me kind of just couch this a little bit. So the reason why I'm framing it this way is because of these 3 movies, and I've seen 2 of the 3, I'm kind of shocked that no one is talking more about The Long Walk. People were talking about The Life of Chuck last fall when it hit the film festival circuit, and there was just a lot of buzz, which is great. And so there was, I'm very happy for Mike Flanagan and the entire cast. And I would like to talk more about The Life of Chuck in more detail in another episode, but there was just a lot of buzz around Life of Chuck, which hit theaters in June. I believe it was June. And then Long Walk came in, but then, Long Walk and The Running Man are coming out in a very similar time frame, which is really interesting and fun. Considering their pairing within the Bachman books, and knowing that we have 2 Richard Bachman adaptations coming out basically just a month apart from one another, it's really fun. But there was definitely a lot more attention on The Running Man due to the expected stardom of Glenn Powell and due to Edgar Wright's kinetic and fun filmmaking. There was just a lot of anticipation for that. But somehow in all of this, The Long Walk was passed over. And like I said, having seen the Life of Chuck, having seen the reviews of The Running Man, I just feel that of these three movies, The Long Walk was the one that people should have been talking about. Now, going back a little bit further, I was not completely excited about the idea of a Long Walk movie. If you remember, if you listened to my review of The Long Walk novella during the Bachman Books review of the Stephen King cast a long time ago, I was not incredibly positive on it. Now, this is a story that I remember having really enjoyed when I first read it, and it had sat positively on the shelf in my mind for years. But when it came time to sitting down to reread it for the purposes of the podcast, I did not enjoy my time. I did not like reading it. I did not like the writing. And in my reflection in the years since, there are some external factors that could be contributing to how I felt at that time. One, the podcast itself for me was a version of The Long Walk. If you remember, for those of you who have been on this journey since the start, I set out to go through the entire works of Stephen King, in the chronological order of publication, and that's a massive undertaking. Everyone was able to get one episode a week, but every episode that you got came from countless hours of reading, of note-taking, of analysis, of prep time, and I had anywhere from between 4 to 6 episodes in the can, just so I could give myself enough lead time. This was a significant and long-term sustaining effort that, of course, like when you first start out, it's exciting. I get to go through all the Stephen King stuff all over again. It's a great idea. I can't wait to do this. Much like The Long Walk, you're full of energy. But after a while, the enormity of the task comes into focus. You cannot see the end at all, and you don't know how you're going to continue doing it. And when by the time I hit the Bachman Books, that's how I felt. I thought I might have made a mistake because this was, pre having a child. I did have more time, but the time that I was spending, it was just this. It was just the podcast. And that's a big undertaking. It's a massive undertaking, and I was exhausted. And also I knew that was the point right before my It review, and I really wanted to get to It. More than anything else, I wanted to get to It, which, as you know, was the novel that inspired everything and started everything in my love of Stephen King. So I really wanted to dive into that and do that justice, and this was the stopgap right before It, so I was less than hesitant about giving it my all. So that book and that review that I gave of it did not have me at my best. Much like the Walkers in this story, it doesn't have them at their best the entire time, which is really interesting. So I had once upon a time really loved it. Then I did not like it so much, but because my experience has been in the last decade or so, I haven't really thought positively too much on The Long Walk. When there was conversation about The Long Walk being turned into a movie, it's like, okay. I know that Frank Darabont had wanted to do it for the longest time. And I think that Frank Darabont would have done a great job. I was really excited for years when he was kind of floated to take care of that, because that's definitely in his wheelhouse, and he would have been able to create a movie that I feel would have stood next to The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. And The Mist, so he has a strong track record of being able to adapt Stephen King novels. So I feel like he would have been great. But when it was moving forward, he wasn't attached to it. I, didn't really pay much attention until I heard that Francis Lawrence was going to direct and J.T. Molnar was going to write. So Francis Lawrence, as you know, is probably most famous at this point for The Hunger Games. And The Hunger Games is a series of novels that I don't really like very much, but do owe a large part to the sort of dystopian fiction that Stephen King helped create. I mean, there is a direct line between The Long Walk and the Hunger Games. So The Long Walk, Battle Royale, The Hunger Games. It's not hard to see that evolution. When I read The Hunger Games and when The Hunger Games was popular over a decade ago, I thought to myself, this is very much The Long Walk. To have a society based around a yearly tournament in which young people are forced to compete to the death for the entertainment of the rest of society, I feel is very much influenced by the Long Walk. So to have the director of the director of The Hunger Games be a part of it, that it's definitely something that he is capable of doing. But I think that of that combination, the person that I was really interested about was the writer who had written and directed last year's Strange Darling, a movie that, if you have not seen, I strongly recommend seeing it. It is so captivating and so well done, and he's someone that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on because it was a great story, and a great movie, a great thrill ride. So this combination, I was really excited for. Francis Lawrence, I still want him to be able to break through the tier that he's in, because I think that there's a lot of talent there. When I saw Constantine many years ago, there were some directorial flourishes within that movie that really showed that he's got a lot of talent there. So I was very excited at this combination. But like I said, I was still out on the idea of The Long Walk. I saw the trailer, I liked it, but I didn't think much about it. It came out in the theaters. I didn't think really too much about seeing it in the theaters. It also came out at a busy time, so I wasn't rushing out to go see it. I also understood that it would probably come out on VOD relatively quickly, which it did. So it was out, and I said, you know what? Let's fire this up. Let's watch it. And despite however I had thought about it or felt about The Long Walk as a story throughout the years, I was immediately sucked in. All right. They immediately established the reality of this America, explain The Long Walk and the rules that are going to dictate our journey with these boys for the next 2 hours right away. It was an effective intro, but really what made it stood out to me so much was how much time you spend with these characters before the title card actually hits. You get to know them, you get to experience the world a little bit, what the stakes are, but then you see what the stakes are when that first death comes for that kid who's really a kid. I mean, and his age really stands out, and that's what makes it all the more tragic when he has that Charlie horse and he's shot in the head. we see that first death. We see the grisly reality that the characters and us have found ourselves in, and then we get the title card, and that's a way to really hook us in. That was an extended opening. And much like I had already talked about at the opening, you have a little bit more energy. There's a lot more confidence. There's a lot more positivity, optimism, and belief that you're going to be able to get through this. Much like how I felt about the podcast when I first started out. And then, boom, this happens. It's stark reality of what they are actually facing. And then it really establishes for us as viewers the journey that we are going to be going on. So that really stood out to me. What also stood out to me was the specificity of this alternate timeline. This time period is so specific. But what I think that's great is that it's not crammed down our throats. It's not overly pointed to. It's a very appropriate setting and an environment to what the book had been, but not in a showy look at me way. The references that the characters are making are very specific to what the characters at that time in this alternate like 60s or 70s, like alternate 70s or alternate 80s. It was written during the 70s, but it's not hard to imagine that it would be slightly ahead in the future, and this is what a young Stephen King would have maybe imagined what an alternative timeline had this war happened, what the 80s might look like. Things are very locked into like a 60s time period that has evolved, but through militaristic means. There's an analog quality to it. We don't have drones flying around. We don't have Wi-Fi. We don't have cell phones. We don't have anything that really marks what we are now. We just have the universality of people trying to make connections in a world that is designed to grind them down. And the little flourishes and little details that they give of a car burning on the side of the road, or just the state of the homes as they walk past them, the look of the camera mounted on the side of the truck, the look of the soldiers themselves, the way that the boys are dressed. All of this does not speak to some futuristic society. It doesn't speak to now. It speaks to a time period that once was. But the world itself, this world that we have found ourselves in, is not it is recognizable, but not a historically accurate one. I'm just very, very impressed with the restraint that they used in showing us what this world was, and it just really speaks to a level of quality of the film. Okay, but really, it's all about us spending time on the walk. Okay, we are the long walkers along with them, and this movie does not work unless you care about these characters. You have to be there, walking with them on this long walk. You have to feel their exhaustion, their camaraderie, their hope, their despair. Francis Lawrence spends what seems like lengthy minutes on the actors, just watching them walk together. Like, think about how much time we spend just watching them walk and talk. You'd think that this might be boring, but it really was some of the most exhilarating storytelling that I have seen this year. And it's a combo of the character work, the writing, and the acting. Like I said, it doesn't work unless you care about the characters, and the characters you don't care about unless the actors are able to make you care about them. So let's kind of clear some room right now to talk about Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson. Cooper Hoffman, famously the son of Philip Seymour Hoffman, and David Johnson, who you may recognize from Industry and Alien Romulus. Okay, so he's someone that clearly has a large screen presence. This guy's got the goods. He is incredibly captivating, charismatic, and he's a really good scene partner. You buy him. And Cooper Hoffman, is a more subdued, realistic performance. Not to say that David Johnson isn't, but I mean that guy's got movie star quality. Cooper Hoffman, kind of has a quiet power to him, but you just want to see the two of them work. You want to see the two of them work this out. You want to see the two of them survive. You want both of them to win. You don't want one over the other to win, because it means that the other one is going to die. You care about them. You care about this friendship that they've created for themselves in this this horrendous and hideous set of circumstances. But you care about them, and you care about them because these actors make you care about them. And through the course of their conversations and getting to know them, we just see their possible futures, one gunshot at a time. No two deaths are the same, which is important in order to break up the possible monotony of this movie. I mean, again, it's all about walking, and you need to make sure that you're creating a thrilling experience of just people walking. The first death is basically a child having a Charlie horse. This is the brutal, unflinching headshot. That is the merciless beginning that this movie needs. We have the man just walking on his ankle. There's the man that gets gut shot. There's a couple run off the road. It answers questions about what would, if you have the runs and your stomach is not agreeing with you, what that would look like. It is, again, the word is unflinching. It's disgusting. It's raw, and it's just a realistic depiction of what would occur, and like the struggle that you are going through on multiple levels. Not only are you trying to stay alive, but your body is trying to avoid its bowels violently, and what happens when these two things meet. And then there's just like the moment of panic and desperation when they have to start to walk up that hill, and then just the massacre that occurs. It's all done really, really well. And another thing that they've done is that they've added motivation that hadn't been there in the book. So Ray has motivation, and I really don't think that was there in the book. I don't remember if there was a real reason why he signed up for the long walk in the book. It's interesting the way that is explored here, which is everyone, quote unquote, signs up for it, but it's not. That's the insidious nature to it. It's this illusion of change, this illusion of choice. They don't really have a choice. Everyone has to sign up. So there's this belief that what they're doing is voluntary, but it's not. It's forced voluntary work. But as far as I can remember in the book, this part that they've added wasn't there. So we see a little bit of the life of Ray prior to him walking on the road with his family, and it's about his father and the impact that his father had on his life. Which, okay, I don't know. I don't know in moments like this when you are an actor and you have a famous father and you are following in that father's footsteps, and you are in a movie in which your footsteps are so important to the plot. This is a character who is in many ways following in his father's footsteps, both within the movie, within the story, and in real life. So when Cooper Hoffman is talking about, or Cooper Hoffman's character Ray is talking about the impact that his father has, I mean, the source material in his own life that he's drawing from has to be palpable. For me as a viewer, like, it's a connection that I'm making, and it's something that just stood out to me, and I just wanted to make note of that. But in the story, Rey's father was someone who was trying to speak truth to power. He was trying to discuss and promote a culture of intellectual curiosity and criticism, in a regime that does not does not value it, but has condemned it and has outlawed it. And so we see what happened when he's found out, and it gives Rey the motivation to join the Long Walk in the hopes that he would use his wish to murder the Major. It's a little bit of a stretch that the Major happens to be the one that oversees and is the face of the Long Walk, and he carries out executions. But possibly this is the state of society that we have found ourselves in within this world, where maybe this dissension and dissidents are not as maybe there's not a lot of them, and it's very, very rare. So this rarity would bring the Major to it, to really stamp out and put a public face to the grinding down of possible revolt in intellectual curiosity as a way to dissuade others from doing it. So that's a possibility. But I just thought it was kind of weird that the Major is the one that carries it out. But regardless, it gives good motivation for Rey to sign up for this in the hopes that he could directly kill the Major. And more importantly, it doesn't just create the motivation for the character. It really sets up what I think the most successful and memorable part of the movie is, that philosophical disagreement between he and Pete. That stretch of the walk where Pete was trying to provide an alternative perspective to looking at the world, I think was incredibly important, and it really stood out, because it's very easy and understandable for Rey to look at the world and see this economic ruin. Everyone does not have a chance. They're living in a totalitarian regime. His own father was murdered right in front of him. He most likely is going to die. And he's going to get shot. His mother's going to have to watch, whether she is there in person or whether she watches on the television. There does not seem to be hope for people. It's a terrible world that they have found themselves in. So it's understandable for Rey to feel that way. Pete, however, as they walk, he sees the beauty in the world around him where he can. And I think that this is really important. And it's very important as we continue to hurtle through our current reality, where if you hop on social media is going to tell you that this is the worst this world has ever been. It's going to tell you that things are awful all the time, and people are awful, and the bureaucracy is a quagmire, that our institutions are failing. And I'm not saying that any of this isn't true, but there is still hope and there is still beauty in the world. And I think that it's important for us to be able to hold these two things simultaneously true and find the hope and find the optimism and find the wonder and find the beauty. These things are essential. Whether it is a sunset, whether it is looking at the stars, whether it is really appreciating a sip of coffee in the morning, whether it is some momentary source of comfort that you have, or holding a loved one, or a relationship that you have, or whatever it is, being able to hold something that is beautiful, whether it's a creative expression, like watching The Long Walk, and watching how all of these different themes are coming together and all these different threads are coming together, and seeing this creative expression. That is a sign that things are not entirely awful. And I think that holding these two things true is incredibly important. And this conversation that he and Rey have with each other is the backbone of this movie and the enduring message of this movie. And yeah, I think that it truly does speak to to our life in America. I think that it speaks to the world that we have found ourselves in, and the fact that we still exist in a society where stories that can be utilized to critique the state of the world and the country that we have found ourselves in, that art is still something that can be used to inspire and to shine a spotlight on the human nature and the state of the world that we have found ourselves in. That is, it's important to underscore. And I think that this really is something that speaks to the country, our country, the country of America in 2025. The major at the beginning tells us that the long walk is an example of the potential of America, the greatness it possesses, and all that it needs is the rekindling of work ethic. It's basically what he's saying in this moment is that he's trying to make America great again. That's the subtext. That's the subtext there. And there's this idea of just, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps to get it done, which, has been the prevailing myth throughout the generations. And it just becomes the text within this story that if you walk long enough and walk hard enough, you will find success. Which unfortunately is just not truth. But this is the metaphor for the story that the characters have found themselves in, and what is very apparent here is that it's not the relentlessness of work that causes our characters to persist. It's through brotherhood, it's through empathy, it's through love. This is what inspires our characters to continue to move forward, not ultimately that carrot at the end, not the stick behind them, not the guns, not the idea of all the money you could want or a wish that can be fulfilled, but it's the bonds that they formed along the way. And in the face of capitalism here, which will just crush you down while dangling the dream of prosperity, they have found each other. They have forged these bonds, and this commentary that Pete makes, that it doesn't matter if it's like 3 days or 30 years, that being in the moment with someone that you care about, that's really what life is. And this story just becomes a metaphor for our lives, and that it does not matter if it's someone that you've just met or have known for your entire life. When you walk alongside them, be present and hold each other up, because that will get us through this walk of life, so to speak. So the ending, reading on the internet and hearing things, it's pretty divisive. For me, it doesn't ruin it for me. And so I guess what people don't like is the book purists, don't like the change, that it's Peter, not Rey, and Rey in the book just keeps on walking, right? And there is like this deathly figure that is following him, or right in front of him, something like that. He's joined by someone that is walking alongside the road with him. It is the literalization of death. But in the movie, it's Peter who wins, and he asks for his wish, which is to have the Major's carbine rifle, which is actually Peter's wish, and so I can understand book readers who like their ending; they don't get the ending. I can understand that. I can understand critics of the movie who find Peter's turn towards pessimism and cynicism a little jarring and unearned based on the life that he had conveyed, that he had lived to Rey, along with the philosophy that he had presented to Rey and us, the audience. So that seems a little disingenuous to that as a character. However, with that being, and there's also the idea that it's just kind of stupid that regardless of like the wish that you get, you don't get to just that the state is going to protect itself, and it's not going to let a member of the state be murdered, especially a high-ranking one, this easily. However, there are elements there that kind of sand those edges of critique for me. For one, the end of the book is very dreamlike, and I think that essence, that spirit, is also captured here. This is through Peter's perspective, and when it ends, last thing that we see is he's walking in, and it's rainy, and there is no one. And I think that's signifying to us, at the audience, that we need to be very careful how we are looking at the end, because prior to that, there was a crowd, and now this crowd is gone. So there are a couple things to think about here. There's a couple of interpretations. One, Pete, died, when he sat down. That's a possibility. And that everything that happens afterwards is just kind of like, his it didn't really happen. That possibly he died when he grabbed the rifle before he shot the major. And there's a possibility that he died after shooting the major. Regardless, the dreamlike quality to it allows you to be able to sort of kind of choose your own ending. But for me, it wasn't enough to ruin the movie for me, because that's not the point. The point is not hurtling towards the ending of this. It is very much the journey. That's the important part. The death is not the important part. Life is the important part. And so the movie itself and everything leading up to that all of those conversations, the thrilling nature of the movie itself, the character work, the writing work, the performances, the relationships, the philosophies, it was all so effective that even if the ending isn't great, it doesn't take anything away for me. I really appreciated spending time with this movie. I thought it was really, really well done. I wish more people were talking about it, and I hope that shows up on a lot of people's best of the year lists, once we start heading towards the end of December and early January, because I think that it deserves to be on there, because it was not talked about nearly as much as, like I said, The Life of Chuck or The Running Man. So I hope that it definitely gets its bona fides at the end of the year, because it's definitely worth checking out. And if you have any thoughts on The Long Walk, write into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. I'd be happy to share all your thoughts. What do you think of the ending? What do you think happened in the ending? Does the ending ruin it for you? Is there anything that you liked or didn't like? Just let me know by writing into StephenKingcast@yahoo.com. And may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I'll see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.